There's a bedtime story nearly every Korean grows up with. A poor man, a stolen robe, a woman who falls from the sky. He hides her only way home and traps her on earth forever. She marries him. She has 2 children with him. Then one day, she finds what he hid. She puts it back on, and she disappears into the sky forever. For generations, this has been told as a sweet, sad fairy tale. But hidden inside it, the historians have found something else entirely. A warning from a talking deer that was broken on purpose. A number that shows up again and again and again. And a man transformed into a bird for a reason nobody talks about. Today, we're going to decode it. Deep in the mountains of ancient Korea, a poor woodcutter saves a dying deer from hunters. The deer speaks. It offers him a secret in return. Tonight, celestial women will descend from the sky. They'll bathe in a hidden pond, steal one robe, a robe made of feathers, and one of them won't be able to fly home. The woodcutter does exactly that. He hides the robe. He waits. When the sky women fly back to heaven, one is left behind, stranded, alone, trapped on earth. She has no way home, so she marries the man who trapped her. Together, they have 2 children. Then one day, she finds her feathered robe, exactly where he hid it. She puts it on. She gathers her children in her arms, and she flies back to the sky, forever. For generations, Korean parents told this story as a gentle warning about broken promises. But historians see something else buried inside it, a memory encoded in a fairy tale of a war fought between 2 worlds, the sky and the earth. If this story feels familiar, it should. In Scotland and Ireland, there is the Selkie, a seal woman who sheds her skin to walk on land and returns to the sea the moment she finds it again. In Japan, there's Hagoromo, a heavenly maiden robbed of her feathered robe by a fisherman, swan maidens, sky brides, stolen skins. This exact pattern, a supernatural bride trapped on earth by a stolen garment, appears across dozens of cultures, from Siberia to Ireland, which means one thing. This isn't really a story about a woodcutter falling in love. It's something older, a memory encoded the same way across an entire continent. But here's what almost no other version of this myth has. A number, not just any number, 2 children, not 1, not 4. A bird, not a seal, not a swan, but one specifically tied to heaven worship in ancient Korean myth. And a rooster, a man transformed not into any animal, but into the one bird sacred enough to call the sun each morning. These details don't exist in the Scottish tale. They don't exist in the Japanese legend. They exist only here, in Korea. And here's the detail that should stop you in your tracks. The deer's warning was specific. Wait until there are 3 children, not 2, 3. But the robe was returned, and the fairy vanished right after the second child was born. Why would a myth built entirely on symbolic numbers break its own rule? What if that broken rule isn't a mistake at all? What if it's the code? Let's start at the very beginning, with the woman who fell from the sky. Who was she really? Across ancient East Asia and the entire Korean peninsula, there was a deep belief in leaders born from eggs and in the bird as a sacred, heaven-sent messenger. Several of Korea's earliest founding kings were said to have hatched from eggs or to carry the mark of a bird as the sign of heavenly authority. The bird wasn't just a bird, it was heaven's proof, passed down to a ruler on earth. Ancient leaders used that exact symbolism to justify their power. So the fairy who fell from the sky wasn't just a woman, she was a symbol, the highest authority of a matriarchal clan, built entirely on the sacred worship of birds. So, what was the feathered robe, really? Scholars read it as a symbol of matriarchal sovereignty itself, a literal garment of power. Which means the woodcutter hiding that robe wasn't just a thief. He may represent a rising patriarchal clan, seizing power from an older, more advanced, matriarchal one. And that brings us to one of the strangest characters in the whole story, the deer. Why would it help the woodcutter, expecting nothing in return? One theory, the deer represents an entirely different clan, one kept powerless under the dominant bird-worshipping matriarchy. If that's true, the deer wasn't repaying a debt. It was making a political move, aligning itself with the rising patriarchal side. Its tip-off wasn't kindness. It may have been betrayal, insider information passed from a third faction to a new power in exchange for a stake in whatever came next. And the deer gave one very specific instruction: never return the robe until she's had 3 children. Why 3? In myth, the number 3 often symbolizes completion, a finished, stable order. 2, on the other hand, usually represents unresolved balance, 2 forces still locked in tension. Apply that here, and the theory emerges. At 2 children, the matriarchal and patriarchal sides are still evenly matched. At 3, the patriarchal order would be sealed, complete. To be clear, this is interpretation, not documented fact. There's no historical record of a literal 3-child rule, but the specificity of that number, landing at exactly this turning point, is hard to write off as coincidence. So why did the fairy fly away at exactly 2 children? If she sensed that a 3rd child would seal her forever inside the patriarchal order with no way back, then that moment wasn't a random accident. It may have been her last possible window, her golden time. Seen this way, her return to the sky isn't a tragic separation. It's a quiet victory, a matriarchal power holding its ground. And what happened to the woodcutter, left behind on Earth? Legend says he stared up at the sky until in his grief he transformed into a rooster. Why a rooster? Ancient Korean tomb murals and historical records show the rooster was part of that same sacred bird worship tradition, a creature believed to summon the sun and call in the dawn. The woodcutter, a man from the losing patriarchal side of this power struggle, was given something in return for his total defeat: sacred status as a rooster. It may have been an ancient myth's way of softening a brutal conflict, a symbolic piece offered to the side that lost. A story we've told our children for generations without a second thought. But inside it, an ancient bird-worshipping matriarchal society, a new patriarchal order rising to challenge it, two worlds colliding, and from that collision, a new era beginning. All of it hidden inside a fairy tale.